So this is my 1970 Dodge Challenger, and I have a 5.7 Hemi swapped into it. So today I'm fixing a leak in my original radiator here. It's a very small leak, so I barely noticed it, but at some point not long after the swap, I started noticing some sort of like drops, like white drops here on the air conditioner pulley and a few other places, and traced it back to the top edge of this radiator here. So I don't know exactly what happened. If there was some sort of vibration of the radiator fan, or maybe just getting old, and I'm not quite sure, but there's definitely a small leak. It'll actually drip down and pool up on the floor. And I'm sure this old radiator can be fixed, but I'm actually just gonna swap it out for this new radiator. Aluminum radiator. So I'm hoping that this actually might cool down the engine just a little bit better. We'll put that to the test. This old radiator did actually work pretty good, but we'll see if this guy keeps the engine any cooler. So first step is to drain this guy and get it ready to be pulled out. All right, there we go. There's the old and the new. This one actually looks pretty good, looks pretty well built. Right off the bat, it does look a little bit thicker. Yeah, you can see the thickness here is about, here. This old one looks like just shy of 2 inches thick. And this guy's more like 3 inches thick. Cool, okay. I know that this one I think is a 3-row, so I wonder if this one maybe is a 2-row. On the website they said the 2-row is up to something like 400 horsepower and the 3-row is like 600 or 700 horsepower. Since I'm running just over 400 horsepower, I went ahead with the bigger radiator. And I have plenty of room in my engine bay, so. It also looks like these standoffs for the fan shroud here are a little bit taller, which is actually good. I was wondering if, having the fan shroud right up against this thing was causing problems, so. And in fact, you can actually see where it was rubbing right here. Here, let's check out that fan. All right, so it's gonna sit something like that on there. Well, the holes don't seem to line up, but I can just re-drill the holes on my fan shroud here. So, all right, so before I get this thing mounted up, I wanted to check something. One advantage of going with an aluminum radiator is that it should save a little bit of weight, because this thing is made out of, I guess, like brass, so it's like mostly copper. Whatever it's made out of, and it does feel a little bit heavier. So, so let's weigh these two and see how much weight I'm gonna save. All right, this one is 21.8. And this guy is 17.8. All right, so 4 pounds. I'm gonna call that negligible. I guess considering how far out over the front of the car the weight is, every little bit helps. All right, I got this thing setting in there. And one thing I did read about is that it's not necessarily a good idea to directly mount an aluminum radiator to your steel radiator core. It seems like there are different opinions on this. There are plenty of people who say they mount right to the radiator core and there's no problem. Then others say, there's some sort of like electrolysis or something, where it's like a chemical reaction that happens between the steel and the aluminum. I don't really quite understand that exactly, but I'll take their word for it on that one. And then also people say that maybe, you know, when you're doing hard cornering, that the body can flex a little bit and actually crack the aluminum radiator. I've actually had some mixed results with these aluminum radiators in the past, so I think I'm going to go ahead and rubber mount. I just got some, you know, thick rubber bushings from the hardware store here, so I'm going to go ahead and put them in there just in case. All right, there we go. All installed, looking good. I got these rubber spacers here and a little bit of rubber on the top of these bolts as well. Hopefully that'll be enough to give it some flex. The mounting holes were pretty close. I did have to widen the holes just a little bit, and I also wanted to give it a little bit of movement here too. So actually a pretty good fitment overall. All right, let's get some coolant in here and get this thing fired up. So one thing I've actually gotten a lot of questions about since starting the swap were what type of seats these guys are. And these are actually aftermarket seats. They're Corbeau LG1s in leather, and they're definitely more of like a race style seats. So they have some pretty serious bolsters here. Definitely more on the racy side, but that's kind of the style I like, you know, something that keeps you in your seat when you're going around corners. I got a pretty good deal on these guys. They were lightly used. Found them on Facebook Marketplace. And it took me a little bit of time to warm up to them, but I actually really like them. I did take these on the road trip. It was like a 2,500 mile road trip, and they're actually very comfortable despite, you know, being kind of more of a race seat. More comfortable than like most stock seats, I would say. And they do really fit the Challenger sort of pattern pretty well. So I know getting aftermarket seats to like really fit well in your classic car is pretty hard to find. And I can say that these guys do fit the old Dodges pretty well. They are a little bit on the narrow side. I think they do make a wide version as well though, so if you're skinny like me, then you probably want to get the normal ones. One thing about them is they do sit up a little bit higher than the stock seats. I think that's a common problem with aftermarket seats because you do have to get, you know, a seat adapter, and so it kind of sits up a little bit higher. And the first set of seat brackets that I built for these guys used 1-inch bar. That ended up being just a little bit too tall and my legs were hitting the steering wheel. So I switched over to flat bar in this guy and it did help, but I didn't do the passenger seat. So as it stands now, the passenger seat actually sits 1 inch higher than the driver's seat, which you might not notice, but I know about that. But it is something I need to fix. Yeah, you can kind of see it right there. I don't know, maybe. So I'm going to take both of these out because I do need to kind of paint and adjust the driver's side. And then I do need to totally rebuild the passenger side. So I'm going to be welding up one for the passenger side, and I'll go ahead and show you what it takes to build a custom seat bracket for these Corbeaus. All right, so here was the first design of a adapter I made, which does use that 1-inch steel bar. And then here's that sort of flat bar design. You know, this one's probably a little bit better just because this bar is more rigid. In my case, even this is, you know, a little bit on the high side still, so you'll definitely want to get these guys as low as possible sitting in your old muscle car. So I have this factory kind of seat riser thing all set. So basically I just need to make a flat square on this thing, and then I need to make sure and line these up with where my seat rails are going to sit just to give it a little extra support. So I pretty much have this thing all square and spaced out the way it needs to be. I have these guys cut and sitting good in there. They'll be something like that. So I'm going to first tack weld them, do some measurements to see where I want the seat to sit, then I'll weld these guys in here. All right, that's pretty much it. The frame rails are just gonna sit right here across those guys. So I'm gonna double check, make sure everything lines up before I fully weld, but I think we're in pretty good shape here. All right, there we go. Everything sits in there nice and square and sits in there very flat. And one thing to check really quick, I'm curious, I want to make sure that the angle, the downward angle, or I guess upward angle, is about the same on both sides. So we're looking at something like 8 or 9 degrees backward sloping angle. And on this side, there you go. Whoop. Just about the same. Perfect. All right, there we go. All welded up. Still a little toasty. And I did check it out. It didn't warp really any at all, really. It wouldn't have really mattered too much if it warped a little bit, but it didn't warp, so we're all good. It's still pretty darn straight. All right, there we go. Both brackets welded up, painted black, good to go.